Okay, practice problem number 3 for chapter 23. So this exercise here is asking us to do a few things. The first thing is to prepare a standard cost card showing the standard cost per unit. Second thing is to compute total budgeted cost for production in August. And the third thing is to determine what the total cost variance is for August and to determine whether it's a positive variance, which is favorable, or a negative variance, which is unfavorable. So for number 1, I'm going to go ahead and set up the standard cost card by bringing in direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. So everything that you see here on this chart for direct materials, direct labor, and overhead, I'm just going to bring it all the way down to this standard cost card that needs to be prepared. For direct materials, we have 2 pounds per unit, and this is going to be multiplied by $2.50 per pound, and that's going to give us $5. And $5, this column here is going to be our standard cost per unit. And this one's going to be for direct materials. Now for direct labor, they give us 0.5 hour per unit at $16 per direct labor hour. So that's 0.5. And that's going to be multiplied by $16 per direct labor hour. And that's going to give us $8. And then for overhead is $12 per direct labor hour. So we're just going to bring down this 0.5 hour per unit since overhead is calculated using direct labor hour. And we're going to multiply it by $12 per direct labor hour. And that's going to give us $6. So our standard cost per unit comes out to be $5 plus $8, that's $13, plus $6, that's going to give us $19. So that's for number 1. Number 2, we got to then take this $19, so our standard cost per unit, and then we're going to have to compute the total budgeted cost for the production in August. So I'm going to bring over here number 2, or put number 2 here, and then I'm going to bring this $19 over here. And this is our standard cost per unit. And I'm going to multiply it by something. And that something is going to be units manufactured, which they give us is actual, underneath actual results of 12,000 units here. So I'm going to multiply the $19 by 12,000 units because that's how many units were manufactured. Okay, so if I do the math, $19 multiplied by 12,000. Okay, that's going to give us $228,000, and that's our total budgeted cost. So number 1 and 2, this is only focused on budgeted cost. And then for number 3, it says compute total cost variance for August. Okay, so in order for us to do that, we're going to now bring in this 228,000. Okay, this is our total budgeted cost. And we're going to subtract it because we're going to have to subtract it from something to determine the comparisons between what's budgeted and what actually occurred. So they let us know that the actual results, so our total manufacturing cost, which is our actual, not budgeted, is $225,400. So that's what I'm going to subtract it by, $225,400. Okay, so if we do the math here, 228, and I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to put on here total actual costs. So 228,000 minus 225,400. That's going to give us a $2,600 variance. Okay, this is our variance here. So we see there's a difference in what's budgeted and what actually happened, the actual results, which that normally happens. Now, if we go back up here to number 3, we have to indicate whether this is a favorable variance or an unfavorable variance. So in this case, since the budgeted cost is greater than what actually happened, the actual cost, this will be a favorable variance. And I'm going to put F, the letter F, indicating favorable right next to 2,600. Now, if this was the other way around, if the actual cost was greater than what was budgeted, then this would have been an unfavorable variance. So again, we only are looking at cost. What's budgeted in this case was more than what actually happened. Or in other words, it was actually what actually happened means that the company spent less than what they thought they were going to spend, which is awesome. Okay, so again, for number 3, the answer is 2,600, and this is a favorable, I'll go ahead and write it out, favorable variance.